The medicinal use of psilocybin-containing mushrooms can be traced to cultures throughout history and throughout the world. In the Americas, these mushrooms and the indigenous cultures who revere and utilize them have faced prohibition through church and state-sponsored oppression for centuries, forcing traditional uses to take place in secret among remote populations in Mexico and Central America. This presentation explores their traditional uses and the physical and spiritual ailments they address. In addition, we'll explore how the psilocybin compound has become part of a larger psychedelic renaissance currently taking place in Western psychiatric medicine, and how growing acceptance has inadvertently fomented unresolved issues surrounding legality, reciprocity, and the ongoing legacy of colonization. Teyanatacatl, or the flesh of the gods, has been widely used by cultures in the Americas long before the European invasion in the 15th century. In the preliminary stages of colonization, those found engaging with Teyanatacatl were punished, often under the penalty of death. Despite this, the Mazatec are one of the few populations who have managed to maintain their healing ceremonies, called Veladas, by adapting elements of the Catholic religion into their practices. In a 2022 study, a Mazatec curandera named Doña Polina defines her people as those who work in the mountains, or humble people of habit. For the Mazatec, the balance of life is maintained by the reciprocal role that people play with their surroundings. When divine and social norms are transgressed, illness or discomfort occurs. It is the job of the curandera to determine where the imbalance occurred. In addressing that place of imbalance, not only does she cure her sick or injured patient of physical, emotional, and spiritual illness, but she also cures her community to maintain cohesion and cultural identity. According to this study, a curandera will establish a dialogue with the saints, the spirits of hills and rivers, the divine creator, and request good fortune for all people and for life in general. For the Mazatec, sacred plants lead to realms of knowledge where healing is learning and learning is healing. The 2022 study describes a man who seeks help for an injured foot. It was Doña Polina's responsibility to locate where it was when he, quote, got scared, which required her and her patient to ingest the mushrooms. By incorporating other essential supportive elements into the velada, such as offering turkey eggs to that place where he got scared, bathing the patient in chicken blood, and having the patient grind 13 cocoa beans, the curandera was somehow able to understand the environmental, familial, emotional, and divine components of the physical ailment, revealing a single moment within a larger web of interconnected circumstances that had manifested, in this case, as an injured foot. Together, the curandera and the patient saw the infection as being, quote, full of flies. They were eating him. His foot was full of blood. The patient then described the, quote, joy of seeing that our Lord Jesus Christ came to cleanse me of all of that. The patient was cured, was eventually able to walk again, and the disease was removed. Despite their long-held status as a Schedule I narcotic, people in the United States have been consuming magic mushrooms for both recreational and spiritual purposes since the 1950s. However, unlike the Mazatec, who possess a sophisticated knowledge of how to effectively treat patients in ways that bridge the biological, the psychological, the spiritual, the environmental, and even the political, research in the United States was stunted in 1971 under the Nixon administration's Controlled Substances Act. However, since research slowly resumed starting in 1994, the psilocybin compound has proven to effectively treat several psychological conditions that include alcoholism, obsessive-compulsive disorder, treatment-resistant major depressive disorder, and end-of-life distress for patients with terminal cancer. Over the past few years, as such promising research has pervaded mainstream consciousness, the United States has seen an explosion of books, documentaries, international symposiums, pharmaceutical patents, and legislative changes. Indeed, the city of San Francisco moved to decriminalize all plant-based entheogens just 2 weeks before the time of this recording. The obvious ethical concern points to the well-being of the Mazatec, their sacred Velada, and to the few other indigenous cultures who have managed to keep their ritual use of teanatacatl a secret for over 500 years. Although pharmaceutical companies currently have 24 registered patents involving the psilocybin compound, none have presented any type of reciprocal agreement with the Mazatec, who in 1955 agreed to perform a velada for the American researcher R. Gordon Wasson. This documented event was published in Life magazine in 1957. 50 years later, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples established that, quote, states shall provide redress through effective mechanisms which may include restitution developed in conjunction with indigenous peoples with respect to their cultural, intellectual, religious, and spiritual property taken without their free, prior, and informed consent or in violation of their laws, traditions, and customs. The current approximated market value of psilocybin has reached $1.5 billion. Regardless of global humanitarian interests, the Mazatec homeland in the state of Oaxaca has seen an influx of non-consensual extractive activity by for-profit researchers, scientists, and amateur mycologists. Since the 4th century AD, Westerners who use plant medicines have been condemned to church and state-sponsored torture, execution, genocide, or imprisonment. Although psychedelic compounds, including psilocybin-containing mushrooms, have been in use in Europe for at least 6,000 years, any knowledge of specific traditional ceremonies that depend on these compounds has been deliberately erased over the centuries. Since 1492, indigenous populations throughout the Americas have faced the same treatment at the hands of the same religious authority. However, some of these populations have managed to bravely protect their knowledge, even under the looming threat of colonial brutality. It may therefore seem natural for the rest of the colonized world to turn to cultures like the Mazatec for knowledge, but when does such knowledge-seeking cross the line of non-consensual appropriation? In researching the supportive elements of the Mazatec Velada, such as the use of turkey eggs, tobacco leaves, copal incense, cocoa beans, chicken blood, song and prayer, I could not find any published measurements of their therapeutic effectiveness. It's possible that dismissive researchers schooled in Western science regard such elements as being superstitious add-ons that cannot be adequately monetized for profit. Of course, incorporating these specific elements in a Western context would only lead to further misappropriation of Mazatec culture. So what will the United States do with this newly found love affair with teanatacatl? What effect will a capitalist delivery system have on teanatacatl's presence in our society? Will the Mazatec Velada be reduced to a 300 milligram prescription in an orange plastic pill bottle? Will that capsule make us less sad when there's a school shooting or an unprecedented forest fire? Can this type of symptom suppression that the West is known for ever truly heal anything?